You ever notice how you blow up someone's phone for 3 hours, then the second they text back, you suddenly don't care? Like you're playing emotional hot potato with yourself? Or maybe you're the opposite guy. The one who pulls away the moment someone gets too close, acts all independent until they leave, then you're secretly devastated. Here's what this actually looks like. You meet someone amazing. The chemistry is insane. You're texting constantly, making plans, everything feels perfect. Then they don't respond for 4 hours and you spiral. You're checking their Instagram, analyzing their last message, wondering if you said something wrong. Or you're the guy who was all in until they started talking about meeting your friends. Suddenly you're busy all the time. You start seeing their flaws instead of their qualities. You convince yourself you're not ready for anything serious. If either of those sound familiar, congratulations. You're stuck in the anxious-avoidant trap. And it's why your relationships keep imploding before they even start. This is literally why I built thecouncil.chat. Because most people can't see their own attachment patterns. You think you're being rational when you're actually just running on autopilot from childhood programming? You need something that knows your personality and isn't afraid to call you out on your BS. It starts with a 2-minute personality assessment that cuts through your self-deception. No credit card, no sales pitch. Then you get access to 9 AI advisors who remember everything about your conversations. Your patterns, your blind spots, your dating history, the stories you tell yourself. One advisor might tell you you're being clingy and need to back off. Another might push back and say you're actually just being human and shouldn't suppress your needs. They disagree with each other. They challenge your thinking. They remember that 3 months ago you did the exact same thing and swore you wouldn't do it again. It's like having a table of smart friends who actually know your psychology and won't let you bullshit yourself or stay stuck in the same patterns. When you're caught in the anxious-avoidant cycle, you can't think your way out alone. Your brain is literally wired to see threats where there aren't any. The Council sees what you can't, and right now you can test it free. Thecouncil.chat, link in the description. Here's what's actually happening in your brain when this cycle kicks in. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, says we develop relationship blueprints as kids based on how our caregivers responded to our needs. If they were inconsistent, sometimes loving and attentive, sometimes distracted or overwhelmed, you develop anxious attachment. Your nervous system learned that love is unpredictable and scarce, so you chase it harder when it's pulling away. You become hypervigilant to any signs of rejection or distance. A delayed text becomes evidence that they're losing interest. If your caregivers were emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or taught you that needing others made you weak, you develop avoidant attachment. You learn that depending on others leads to disappointment or makes you vulnerable to being hurt. So you keep people at arm's length to protect yourself. You equate independence with safety and intimacy with danger. But here's the psychological kicker that most people don't realize. Research from the University of Illinois found that anxious and avoidant people are magnetically attracted to each other. It's called the anxious-avoidant trap, and it's not coincidence, it's chemistry. The anxious person's need for closeness and emotional expression feels exciting to the avoidant person who's been suppressing those needs their whole life. The avoidant person's confidence and independence feels attractive to the anxious person who struggles with self-worth. But once you're together, everything flips. The anxious person's need for closeness triggers the avoidant person's fear of losing their independence. The avoidant person's need for space triggers the anxious person's fear of abandonment. It's like psychological kryptonite. You're each other's worst nightmare and biggest addiction rolled into one toxic, irresistible package. Why does this matter more than just dating drama? Because this pattern shows up everywhere in your life, like a virus that infects every relationship. At work, you might be the guy who needs constant feedback from your boss, then gets overwhelmed when they actually give it. You're always checking if you're doing okay, but when they tell you what to improve, you take it as proof that you're failing. Or you're the opposite guy who avoids one-on-ones and acts like feedback doesn't matter. Then spirals when you don't get promoted. You convince yourself you don't care about advancement, but deep down you're devastated they didn't notice your contributions. With friendships, you're either the one who texts too much in the group chat and gets hurt when people don't respond immediately, or you're the guy who disappears for months without explanation, then wonders why your friends stopped inviting you to things. There's no middle ground because your nervous system doesn't have a middle setting. A UCLA study found that people with anxious attachment have chronically elevated cortisol levels. That's your stress hormone, especially in relationships. They're literally living in fight or flight mode, scanning for threats that mostly exist in their imagination. Their brains are burning through energy, looking for signs of rejection or abandonment. Avoidant people show the opposite pattern, but it's equally problematic. Their stress hormones actually decrease around others because they've learned to shut down emotionally as a survival mechanism. But this emotional numbing comes at a cost. they're missing out on the actual neurochemical benefits of connection, the oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin that come from genuine intimacy. And both patterns are self-reinforcing in the cruelest way possible. The more the anxious person chases, the more trapped and suffocated the avoidant person feels, so they pull away harder. The more the avoidant person withdraws, the more abandoned and panicked the anxious person feels, so they chase harder. It's an endless dance where nobody wins, and both people end up confirming their worst beliefs about relationships. Let me paint you some pictures of how this plays out in real life. Anxious attachment guy meets a girl on a dating app. First few dates go amazing. She's responsive, engaged, laughing at his jokes. He's already imagining introducing her to his parents. Then she takes 6 hours to respond to a text, and his brain goes into full detective mode. He's analyzing the punctuation in her messages, checking if she viewed his Instagram story, asking his friends to decode what sounds good, means versus sounds good. He starts double texting, suggesting more frequent hangouts, bringing up exclusivity way too early. She starts feeling pressured and pulls back. He interprets this as confirmation that he's not good enough and either becomes more clingy or completely withdraws and hurt. Meanwhile, avoidant attachment guy is on the other side of town doing the opposite dance. He meets someone incredible, has amazing chemistry. Everything feels effortless. But the moment she starts texting him good morning every day or wants to hang out 3 times in 1 week, his internal alarm system goes off. Suddenly, he's noticing things that annoy him about her. Maybe she's too available or too eager. He starts responding less, making himself busier, creating distance. When she asks if everything's okay, he says he's just focused on work or not ready for anything serious right now. She eventually gets fed up and leaves, which confirms his belief that people always leave anyway, so why get attached? Here's the workplace version. Anxious attachment employee constantly seeks validation from their manager. They're the first to arrive, last to leave, always asking if they're doing things right. But when performance review time comes and their boss gives constructive feedback, they hear it as "you're terrible at your job." They either become defensive or spiral into self-doubt, working even harder to prove themselves worthy. Avoidant attachment employee acts like they don't need anyone. They rarely ask for help, avoid team meetings when possible, and bristle at micromanagement. But when they get passed over for promotion, they're secretly devastated. Instead of advocating for themselves or seeking feedback, they convince themselves the company doesn't appreciate talent and start looking for a new job. So what do you actually do about this? Because awareness without action is just expensive self-torture. First, honestly identify your pattern. Most guys think they're more avoidant than they actually are, because our culture tells men that neediness is weakness. But if you're watching this video and getting triggered by these examples, you probably care more than you want to admit. Ask yourself, when relationships get challenging, do you tend to move toward the person or away from them? Do you seek more communication or less? Do you want to fix things immediately, or do you need space to think? Neither is wrong, but you need to know which one you default to. Second, learn to sit with discomfort instead of immediately reacting to it. This is the hardest part, because your attachment system evolved to treat relationship threats like actual life-or-death situations. Anxious attachment makes you want to fix things immediately. Send another text, have the talk, show up at their apartment. Avoidant attachment makes you want to create distance when things get emotionally intense. Cancel plans, pick fights, focus on their flaws. Both are reactions to anxiety, not actual solutions to relationship problems. Try this specific exercise. When you feel that familiar attachment panic, whether it's the urge to chase or the urge to run, commit to pausing for 24 hours before taking any action. Don't text. Don't make relationship decisions. Don't do anything except notice what you're feeling in your body. Where is the anxiety sitting? What stories is your brain telling you? The feeling won't kill you, even though your nervous system is convinced it will. Third, communicate your pattern to people who matter, not as an excuse but as useful information. Hey, I tend to get anxious when I don't hear from people for a while. It's not about you or what you did wrong. It's just how my brain works. If I seem clingy sometimes, just let me know and I'll work on giving you space. Or I have a habit of pulling away when I start really caring about someone. It's a defense mechanism I'm working on. If I do that, please call me out instead of just letting me disappear. Most emotionally mature people actually appreciate this kind of transparency because it helps them understand your behavior isn't about them. Fourth, actively seek out people with secure attachment instead of being magnetically drawn to your psychological kryptonite. Secure people stay calm when you're activated. They don't chase when you pull away or run when you're going through a clingy phase. They're like relationship shock absorbers who can handle your attachment system without getting triggered themselves. About 60% of adults have secure attachment, so they're not unicorns. They're the people who communicate directly, don't play games, can handle conflict without it being the end of the world, and genuinely seem to enjoy intimacy without being consumed by it. Fifth, practice opposite action. If you're anxious, practice being less available sometimes, not playing games, but genuinely having other things going on in your life. If you're avoidant, practice staying present when you want to run. Lean into uncomfortable conversations instead of avoiding them. Here are some advanced moves for when you're ready to really break these patterns. Start paying attention to your physical sensations before your thoughts kick in. Attachment activation happens in your body first: tight chest, shallow breathing, stomach dropping, restless energy. If you can catch it at the body level, you can choose a different response before your brain starts spinning stories. Practice what psychologists call earned security. This means consciously developing the traits of secure attachment through deliberate practice. Secure people assume positive intent until proven otherwise. They can ask for what they need without being demanding. They can give their partner space without taking it personally. They view conflict as information, not catastrophe. You can literally rewire your brain by practicing these responses even when they don't feel natural. Use what's called the protest versus withdrawal test. When something bothers you in a relationship, notice whether your first instinct is to protest. Call attention to it, demand a response, seek reassurance, or withdraw, go silent, create distance, detach emotionally. Both can be appropriate depending on the situation, but if you only have one setting, you're operating from attachment trauma, not conscious choice. Work on developing both capacities so you can choose your response based on what the situation actually needs. Learn to differentiate between attachment activation and actual relationship problems. Sometimes your anxiety is just your attachment system being triggered by something innocuous, and the relationship is actually fine, but sometimes your attachment system is picking up on real issues that need to be addressed. The key is pausing long enough to figure out which one it is before you react. Finally, understand that healing attachment trauma is not about becoming emotionally bulletproof. It's about developing the capacity to stay connected to yourself and others even when you're scared. Secure attachment isn't the absence of anxiety, it's the ability to feel anxiety without letting it drive your behavior. Look, attachment styles aren't your destiny or your identity. They're just survival strategies you developed when your brain was still figuring out how relationships work. The part of you that learned these patterns was probably under 10 years old and doing the best they could with limited information. But you're not that kid anymore, and you don't have to keep running those same programs. You can change these patterns, but you can't think your way out of them. You need awareness, consistent practice, probably some good feedback from people who can see your blind spots, and a lot of self-compassion for how messy this process can be. That's where something like the Counsel Tat Chat actually helps. It's not therapy, but it's honest, consistent analysis of your patterns based on real personality data. And unlike your friends who get tired of hearing the same relationship drama, it remembers your conversations and can point out when you're doing the exact same thing you did 6 months ago. The anxious-avoidant trap feels inevitable and all-consuming when you're in it. But it's just a psychological dance you learned. And like any dance, you can learn the steps to a different one. It takes practice and patience with yourself, but it's absolutely possible. Your attachment style is just your starting point.